Are we live?
We're live.
We're not. I'm not on.
Okay, hold on.
The Joelle show now.
Come back closer. Or go this way. I don't know. Oh, dear Lord. It's a fun live.
We're going to do this. No,
Other way.
we're going to do this.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
Hi. Sorry we missed you guys on Tuesday. We were having bad internet issues, had to do hard resets, and it took a while. So we missed last Tuesday.
Yeah, we missed you on Tuesday, and that was a real pain. You were on a video conference.
I was, and I kept getting kicked on and off. It was the worst.
And I was on a phone call. So we're so dependent on the internet now.
Yeah, we are.
So I'm Laura Dabney. This is Joelle Brandt, and who do we do? We help men with their emotional and relationship problems.
Yeah.
I'm a psychotherapist, and Joelle's a coach. And we've talked about our goal being to help people get over their fear of picking up the phone or
coming in
the door,
or even emailing, anything.
Right, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what we do.
Yeah.
So we're bringing you into the office here, telling you a little bit about the process, what it's like, what we do, to hopefully get that fear, eased, or how we want to say it.
Yeah.
To ease your fears of us.
Yeah, true.
Basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we, so what did we talk about? We've touched on
anger, neediness, sadness, just negative emotions being normal.
Yeah.
So we've talked about that.
It's important to normalize those, which some people think are bad or wrong. And then the other is what people think is good can be not so good, such as altruism that has gone awry. Basically, altruism that had having secret strings attached
that people don't know about.
Right, they don't understand. So that definitely can go wrong in a relationship.
Yes,
pretty quickly. And so what other aha moments do we?
One that I think people have trouble with, boundary setting.
Oh, that's a good one, because people think boundaries are bad sometimes.
Correct.
But we're always teaching, what's the saying I say? Good boundaries make good relationships.
It's true.
Right?
Yes.
Right. But people think it's mean because, my patients think it's mean because they think it's a separating thing.
Yeah.
Which it is, but
sometimes it's a need. I mean,
yes.
Boundaries are very important. And then also, to me, when it comes to boundaries, I think people think of them as, oh, well, I shouldn't give people rules. I shouldn't tell people they make rules for people, like when they're adults. But it's not a rule. A boundary is something that everybody needs.
Well, it helps people to know where you begin, where you end, or where something works for you and something doesn't. So yes, everybody needs that, because it's letting people know where they're intruding.
Yeah.
Whether they don't mean to. Yeah, most of the time people set a boundary, it's not against people who are meaning to be invasive or mean or hurtful. Mm-hmm. That's why you need to say this is hurtful. You don't know it, but it's hurtful.
Yeah.
So so they think, so you think so your patients have seen that it feels condescending when they put up a boundary, and mine feel it's being mean because they're saying back off.
Right.
But there are nice ways to set boundaries.
That's true. It's true.
Right. That's what people are sort of surprised with. Oh.
You can set a boundary. And so what would you say, because this is what I know we've talked about, so maybe you can explain to our viewers, what happens when somebody just dismisses a boundary? If you set a boundary and that person doesn't even acknowledge it or doesn't care about that boundary?
That's a great question. So then we have to, so once we talk about setting a boundary, like nicely, kindly setting boundaries, we talk about the different levels of boundaries, right? Because that's kind of common. Either they'll ignore the boundary, or after a while, it's not a priority to them. So the other person has to remind them of the boundary. But if they're just flat out not acknowledging it, then there's different levels. So if you say, that when you talk about that subject, when you talk about this woman at work, it bothers me. It just makes me feel anxious, and I don't care for it. And he's like, well, it's no big deal. Why are you making a big deal of it? Right. So you set a boundary. He's ignoring it, or she. And then you have to say, okay, this is, I know you don't understand it, but I have to let you know this is very important to me. I really need you to stop. So it's these different levels of aggression, constructive aggression. That's going to have to be another talk. Constructive aggression to make sure the boundary is taken seriously.
Yeah.
Because some people will then say, well, he doesn't care, and then give up on the boundaries. And that's absolutely wrong.
Yeah. He
or she doesn't see it your way. So that doesn't mean you give up on it. That means you have to explain it more or be a little bit more insistent.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard setting boundaries sometimes for people that, never had to do it in the past, or, didn't grow up with seeing people set boundaries.
Right.
I mean, I think that's why it's important for like adults to know how to do that, because, especially for like me with small children, it's like I need to be able to show my own boundaries so that they'll know how to set boundaries even as little kids.
Yeah, well, that's another,
in a sense,
really great side effect that is really helpful. It's not, and I've seen this too, where when we have one person come in and like if they're married or in a relationship, and they start getting better at setting boundaries, automatically, I don't think it's even conscious, their partner starts getting better at setting boundaries. Mm-hmm. I always use the example of if you've ever asked anybody to go to a movie and they say yes, and then you get to you're going to the movie and you get the sense they don't really want to be there. You're like, it's very frustrating. You wish they had just said, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy this afternoon, or I've got some other plans this afternoon.
Yeah.
So I always remind people that if you're on the other side of that, you appreciate a boundary. You'd rather know than to hurt the person by accident. No one wants to, especially if it's a friend.
I know. I think it always goes back to people we can't read minds.
Right.
Nobody can read each other's mind. So that boundary that you want to set may be something that another person might be like, oh, all right, didn't know that. Now I know.
Right.
And they're happy.
Right. They're happy. They're relieved. Now I know more about you.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what we always talk about. Intimacy being more about transparency than anything else.
Absolutely.
So the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like your intimate relationship, that's really what you're sharing, should be.
Yeah.
And what we always, then the other part we talk about, it's not that we see this, right? Because we see this and we work on this every day. But what we've been working on more broadly in the past 5 years has been the fact that we see this, but this has been going on for years. In some cases of my patients, decades. Mm-hmm. And that's that really blows our minds, that they're suffering, right, for all this time. It's one thing if they come in, they're hurt and they're suffering, and we're helping them, but I feel like saying, what?
Why'd you wait so long? I wish you came in sooner,
And what do they say every single time? And I know you've had this too, because we talked about it, but every single time when they leave or halfway through treatment, when they're starting to feel better, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yes. Okay.
You're right. They say that 9 times out of 10.
I would say yes. You're right.
People are like, what is this? So we're appealing to those people who are out there and who haven't been able to come in. You don't need to suffer for years to come in.
Yeah.
How many people have a toothache for years?
Yeah, they're scared to go to the dentist, and then it gets so much worse. And then they, instead of getting a cavity filled, they get a tooth pulled or a root canal.
But I think they even go to the dentist when they go to us.
I know, that's true.
Thinking it's going to be too painful or something. I don't know. So yes, that's been the real tragedy that we see, is that people are suffering
and they don't need to.
They don't need to. Sometimes people come in like a crisis.
Yeah.
Because they let this go. But you don't have to be in a crisis. You don't have to be getting a divorce or feeling like you're ready to pull your hair out.
Yeah.
Before you get help.
I do think that sometimes people don't realize how helpful it could be, even like you said, when you're not in a crisis, just to have, whether it's therapy or coaching, it's just somebody there for you
Right.
to help you understand yourself better. Because the more you understand yourself, the better you are for your spouse, your partner, anybody.
Your kids,
I mean,
as
your
you
kids.
mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are asking you if you know somebody like this in your life. Lots of us do.
Yeah.
Would you please share this with them to maybe help them, overcome that last step to coming in?
Or it could also be someone that you are trying to set a boundary with and want to make sure they understand that it's not a bad thing.
Right. That's right. It's another way.
Yeah.
But in any event, we're going to see you next Tuesday.
Okay.
Unless our internet goes out again,
I hope not.
which it won't.
All right. Have a good week.
Yes, good weekend.
Bye. Oh, it is almost the weekend.
Definitely almost the weekend. Don't forget that.